When leadership moves, there's a certain kind of quiet that falls over a building. It's not loud, but it's there. Being careful, as if the walls were waiting to see what would happen next. That Friday morning, the halls of Elridge and the company was unusually quiet, but not in a calm way. This was the kind of people walked faster, spoke less loudly, and looked over their shoulders twice. I worked there for 9 years, long enough to know what that kind of silence meant. The CEO, Richard Elridge, was on sick leave because he had to have surgery without warning. What the letter said, a short break for recovery. It sounded good, but those who had worked in business for a while knew that temporary could turn into permanent as soon as the board smelt a rat. New direction, and it was called Chase, Elridge Richard's son. He was 31 years old, tall and tan, and always looked like he was going to a startup pitch event. No tie, slim fit. He worked as an intern for the company for 6 years during the summer, and apparently thought that was enough to run it. The board agreed, or at least they said they did. Nepotism had its own kind of gravity. Chase was named temporary director, but the word interim wasn't used, quickly out of everyone's vocabulary. He walked in like he already had the win, and in reality, I watched him from my small office with glass walls, which is close to the translation and foreign relations departments. It's not a fancy place, but it's quiet, private, and has just the right amount of a view. Out of the main hallway to watch everything without being seen, that worked for me. Work was based on careful hearing, observing, and decoding not only words, but I speak 7 languages fluently, not just a few words here and there. Business level, knowing the subtleties of regional customs and etiquette. I'd worked with customers from Tokyo to Sao Paulo. They helped settle fragile contract fights in Mandarin, logistics problems in Russia, and even once dealt with a misunderstanding of emergency procedures with French customs official that could have caused a $12 million shipment to be late, but Chase didn't know that. If we saw each other in the hallway for the first time, he didn't even look at me. He looked through me by like I was a blank spot on his carefully put-together vision board of he called out the loud salespeople by name and gave marketing a nod. But when he walked by the quiet areas that do the real work, he didn't even blink. I wasn't paying attention. I was hurt. But I found it funny that afternoon when a small group of us got together in the staff lounge for coffee. The types of people who went there before the company change were hip veteran survivors. One of Mark's top analysts leaned in and said, I already have department reviews planned, and I heard he wants to cut the costs of foreign consulting. Let me guess, he thinks Google Translate can handle that? I asked as I slowly stirred my coffee. Our briefings to clients, Mark said with a laugh that wasn't warm. Most likely I didn't say anything else. There was no point in arguing about choices just yet. I'd seen young leaders come and go. Sure, they were the first to find efficiency, but this time something felt different. It wasn't that Chase was smarter. He wasn't. But because he was sure of himself in ways that only someone who is deeply unaware could be. Later that day, as I finished a briefing packet in Mandarin and Portuguese for a client talk on Monday, my email pings. The review of Department Reorganization G comes from Chase's assistant at 4:30 p.m. I got there 10 minutes early just in case, since I didn't have a plan. Chase was already sitting at the long table looking through a file that I knew was the quarterly performance report. My review was written in black and white at the top. Natalie was right, he said, without looking up. Yes. Thanks for coming. We're making things easier. He talked about streamlining as if it were a magic trick, as if it would make inefficiency will go away on command. Your area is a bit specialized, he said. We've chosen to hire an international company in Singapore to handle our language needs, because it will save us time and money. I looked at him for a moment before continuing to look at him. Taking a close look at how carelessly he said it, no venom, just thought I was, and I asked quietly, is this old tool no longer valid as of right now? And he nodded. You'll be off payroll. By Sunday, HR will send you information about your severance. Of course, we value your time here. I smiled, not angry, just quiet. Then I moved my laptop across the table and stood up. "Good luck with your Monday meeting?" He blinked, not sure. "Which meeting?" "You'll find out." Then I left the room. I didn't slam the door, cry, or say anything. Another word, but I could feel the change as I walked down that hallway. There are storms that don't need thunder to be heard. They just need quiet. By the time I got to at this point, the sun had already started to go down behind the city, creating long shadows on the ground. I stood next to my car for a moment with the keys in his hand and just listened. The world above was buzzing with the same Friday rush, cars honking, phones ringing, and people are in a hurry to get somewhere else. But down here it was quiet, like after something important. What you've worked so hard to build has been broken. It's not destroyed yet, but it's cracked right down. I sat in the driver's seat in the middle and opened my laptop one last time before putting it to sleep. Mode. The meeting brief I had worked on for 2 weeks was shown on the screen in Mandarin, Portuguese, and Arabic. Cultural norms and travel. Tastes for visiting delegates, as well as a list of formal titles to use when writing to the CEO from Beijing. It all makes no sense to a man now. Who knew that outsourcing meant understand? I shut down the machine and slowly let out a breath, letting him go into that meeting blind. The weekend went by in a strange silence in the air. I didn't tell many people what had happened. A few texts came in from co-workers who knew about the news but were too careful to say anything. I knew for sure that offices like ours weren't no longer safe places to show loyalty. I went for long walks and cleaned out a kitchen drawer that hadn't been used in months, but my thought kept going back to same thought. He has no idea what he's done. Chase hadn't just fired a worker. He took apart a bridge that had been carefully made over many years of quiet, patient work. Relationships don't live in numbers. They live in the respectful eye contact that happens between translations. Practices that aren't said out loud but are important if you know why they're important, but Chase didn't go into that much. Sunday evening, I put together a small folder. It wasn't a plan for revenge yet. It was just for show. Paperwork notes, screenshots, copies of emails, a short USB drive with clear labels inside a padded package. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it yet. Only that it was smart to be ready for when powerful people started to fall, and Chase would fall. Of that, I was sure. Without a doubt, Monday morning came in gray and wet, with the kind of rain that makes even the city look lost. I was dressed simply, slacks and a dark sweater, with no makeup on and no need to put on a show. Going anywhere by 9:35 a.m., my phone started to ring. It was an unknown caller, so I let it go. Second call at 9:42 and then a third, this time from the office phone I picked up, said nothing. Natalie's voice came on. There was a pause, and then more. "Quickly, this is Carla, from Chase's team. She was one of the new hires." "Good morning," I said in a neutral voice. "There's a bit of a problem with the meeting this morning. The Gold Reach group showed up about 30 minutes ago and asked to speak with you by name. It had been so quiet for so long that she had to say sorry. They didn't tell us they were expecting you. Mr. Elridge thought the new language services provider, they don't want I gently cut off a vendor. They want someone who can understand what they're saying. They want Carla to be quiet, and she almost wasn't, saying, 'Would you mind coming in to make things right?' I let the question linger for 5 seconds. 'No,' I finally said. 'I don't things over again,' so I hung up. From what I heard later, the meeting was a disaster. Goldreach's VP wouldn't move forward until I was there. When I told him I was there after being let go, he just stood up and left. There was no yelling or a big exit, just a quiet bow and a word that Chase didn't get. When you take the person away, you get rid of the relationship, not the person in the relationship. No one in the room could explain what that meant, but as soon as the group left, they knew what they had lost. By lunchtime, The office was empty. Talk went around in small groups. Someone saw Chase slam a door, and someone else said the CFO looked like he had seen a ghost. Carla sent me one last message. One line. I think you should know that the CEO is back from sick leave. I read it twice and then smiled, because if there was one person it was Richard Elridge, who knew exactly what I did at Elridge and Company. Something told me that Monday afternoon was going to last a long time for his son. By the time Chase realized how bad things were going to get, it was too late. Late that night, I heard from Mark, an old coworker who always knew more than he said. He called, and his voice was clear, as if he were telling me state secrets in a whisper. "They're panicking," he said. When Goldreach left, the CFO asked for a debriefing right away. Chase tried to lie his way through it, said. It was a misunderstanding of their culture that they were too strict. I leaned back in my chair and watched. The curl of steam from my tea, and Richard, there was a break in the queue. Then Mark muttered. He walked in the middle of the meeting. I could see it clearly. Elridge's face was thinner than it used to be, but his eyes were still sharp. He wasn't loud, and he never needed to be. People leaned in closer when he spoke, which showed how powerful he was. He didn't say anything. He just stood there for a while. Mark went on. He asked, "Where is Natalie?" I didn't answer because I didn't have to. Mark went on, and Chase tried to explain something about how much it costs to modernize. After hearing about cutting third-party options, Richard went to the CFO and asked for the gold. After that, he just left the room. There was no big statement or blow-up. Mark's words fell off, and Chase looked like he had been hit in the gut. I could almost hear the smile in his voice as he asked, "Why are you telling me all this?" "Because you should know Natalie. The building is moving and people are starting to figure out who held Get It Together." I sat still for a long time after the call. Satisfaction, but also thought. I hadn't planned any of this, and I hadn't needed to. Chase had lit the fuse. The match himself. All I did was start a fire that spread. The next morning, asleep in front of my apartment building, a black car pulled up. From the second-floor window, I saw the driver get out. He looked at his phone and then up at my unit. I didn't move because I already knew what the message would say. After a few minutes, Richard's phone rang. Elridge called for a private meeting. The email was only 2. "Natalie, I'm very sorry about what happened. I'd love the chance to talk to you. My office is open at 10 a.m. Please think about it. There is no rush or demand. Respect." I looked at the screen and thought about what to do. Part of me wanted to delete it, the message, and move on, but another part of me, the part that still had 9 years of loyalty to him, chose to hear what he had to say. I walked into the Elridge and Company hallway one last time at 9:55. It looked the same: marble floors, tall glass walls, and a faint smell of coffee and printer ink. But something wasn't right. People weren't happy, and conversations were clipped. The receptionist, who used to call me by name, now looked up at me with wide eyes. Not sure if I was a friend or a ghost. The lift ride was quiet. He was already standing when I walked into Richard's office. He looked tired but not weak. Man who had watched his business fail and then come back before it did. "Natalie," he said quietly, "thank you for coming." I said, "You asked." He sat down in a chair, next to me. No desk between us, no titles. "I've made a terrible mistake," he said without doubt. "Or rather, I let one be made while I wasn't there, which cost us a partnership. Spent 12 years growing it. It cost you more than that," I told them, "but I think you already know that." He gave one serious nod. Chase still. "Didn't get what you did for us." "I do, though, and I'm sorry that silence fell between us. For once it wasn't awkward. It was helpful to make clear that I'm not asking you to come back. I think you're already thinking about better chances, and you deserve them," Richard said. "But if you'd be willing, I would like to hire you as a freelancer." "You are not under Chase?" "Someone." He pulled a paper out of a folder and slid it across the table. Clean director for 6 months, full executive-level access, and 3 times as much freedom as before. Pay with no strings attached and just one. Bold line at the end of the deal: be changed or revoked by any present or future member of the Elridge family. I almost smiled, but I didn't. He looked Richard in the eye and said, "I'll think about it." And then he did nothing but nod once. The kind of respect that most business leaders lose when they lose power. As I turned to leave, he said one last thing. "You saved this business more times than Chase will ever know. If you don't want to help us again, that's fine with me. But I do want you to know that he won't be in charge for much longer." I left with the offer in my hand and something else in my heart. It wasn't victory or payback, but something quieter, sharper, and more powerful. I had full power over it and knew exactly what I was going to do with it. I didn't jump at Richard's offer because I knew I should have. Then to take an apology that comes with a contract, especially one that's written in ink. But desperation. Power that has been abused always tries to come back with a humble face, but real humility doesn't ask for a favor, it takes the blame. And Chase had not taken anything but shortcuts. 3 days went by, and the executives on the floor were getting more and more tense. I could feel it was like there was stress in the air because messages kept coming in. First, they were from HR, then the CFO, and finally it was Marcia Luring, who was head of global relationships and whose name I hadn't seen in years. The email was carefully full of business speak like collaborative solutions, strategizing, to build bridges and always going forward. But below the tone made me understand what she wasn't saying. The cracks were getting bigger, and they needed me to stop the walls from... I only said one thing in response. "Have Chase call me." I didn't want a room full of people saying sorry. I wanted to see if the boy who fired me could get over his pride. To which he replied. 2 hours later, my phone rang. His name flashed on the screen like a "let it ring" once, then twice, and then picked it up. "Hi, Natalie," he said. Fast, with a tight voice. "I just wanted to reach out personally. To see if we could clear the air and talk about what to do next." I didn't answer. Some men can't handle the weight of silence. He cleared his throat and pressed on. "I think there were mistakes earlier. We both want what's best for the business, and I think your advice would help us as we move forward with our foreign plans." As a partner, I said just the right amount of frost to make him cold. Pause. "Of course, your terms would be respected," he quickly added. "Consulting power, flexibility from a distance, whatever is needed." He didn't talk about the firing, the insult, or the meeting I planned, but failed the moment I left. The quiet told me, there's a phrase in everything I said without getting angry. In Japanese, you hammer down the nail that sticks out. But in Mandarin, there's another one. Kill the chicken to scare the monkeys. Do you understand what they mean? Chase laughed. I said, "That's why because I don't speak either language," and was feeling worried. I waited until he started to move around again, and then I said, "I'll think about the deal. But there is one thing I need first. I want full access to everything." I told the client database, internal memos, vendor reports, and partner comm logs. He paused and then said, "That's everything that went through the international channel since I left. Then we're done with this." "No, wait." He quickly changed his mind. "You'll good," I replied. "If you let me, I'll send the clearance forms this evening. Let's schedule our first meeting Monday morning." "Fantastic," he said. He said, "Welcome back, Natalie." But I didn't say thank you. But I wasn't coming back to help him. Monday, I was coming back to see what he broke and how bad the damage was. I walked into the building in the morning like a shadow coming back to claim its space. No official statement was made, just a badge given back. A guest pass quietly turned into permanent clearance and a temporary. That office is like a cold glass cube between law and procurement. That office is not like a cage. Perfect with windows. I smiled, didn't say anything, and opened my laptop. By at noon, I had what I needed, and by 3, I knew how bad the damage was. 2 big clients had started to ignore Elridge, and Company 1 had found a lot of culture violations in their last draft of the contract. Someone else had already reached out to my old co-worker, Raul. He was now working alone in Brazil and asked if he knew where I was. Then there was Singapore. Company that Chase had hired to take my place, I got the report. Notes missed deadlines and ideas for tone-deaf language. The Goldreach mess wasn't an oddity. It was the start. Every client I'd ever cared for now saw me as Elridge, as unstable, rude, and irresponsible, and they were right. Made a summary that wasn't just a list of failures, but also a plan for how they could have been prevented. A quiet ledger of loss. I set up a private meeting with Richard He, not with Chase. I got there on time, tired but ready to listen. I have what you need, I told them, but I'm not here to fix what your son broke. He nodded as if he already knew. He knew I was going to show him what happens when you mistake ease of speech for importance and loyalty for Richard didn't talk over me. He just asked, "What do you need?" I smiled. Then it was cold and clean. There was only space in your silence. Because the right way to get payback isn't loud. It's quiet, patient, and smooth. Monday was just the start. The key to taking down a building isn't to tear down the walls, but to find the load-bearing beams that no one sees and carefully take them down one at a time. I did what I said I would do every morning. I got there early and stayed there all morning. Before the suits filled the halls with fake energy, I didn't draw attention to myself or bark orders. I just worked, calm, surgical silence. I looked over Chase's messages with our clients from other countries. Most of them were silly form emails that were copied and pasted, in translations that leave out subtlety and warmth. In a deal with a Tokyo-based company, he called the CEO by his first name twice in the subject line. In Portuguese, he had it backwards. The right amount of official and casual tone to call a senior partner bro, and in one mistranslation of a vendor clause in a Chinese. Contract made it sound like the client would pay our failure-related costs. That one almost cost us a $12 million extension. It wasn't just the language, incompetence. It was cultural arrogance. I kept track of everything and quietly flagged it. Date-crossed files kept track of complaints that had been hidden or didn't pay attention to any of the notes that added to the case I was building. Not to blame, show that respect is required. And Chase, he walked through the building with a lot of performative energy. Busy meetings and loud talks in the hallways, professional writing on LinkedIn about being a leader in the modern world. I saw him once in the "How are things going?" he asked me with a tight smile that showed no teeth. I smiled softly, like a man trying to make peace with a gun drawn. Fluent. He didn't get the joke that afternoon when I called Mr. Kenji, my CEO of the Japanese company we were about to lose. We hadn't talked in a while. It's been almost a year since Richard's last trip before his health got worse. Kenji answered the first ring from Natalie, he said, and the love was clear. Through the shaky connection, "You've come back for a short time," I responded as an expert, "but I wanted to get in touch with you before any decisions are made." He was quiet for a moment. "And then you? I know the company has lost our brand and what we expect from them, and now they only remember. Because they're afraid I didn't protect us or offer hollow. I'm sorry. I meant to say that the only thing that counted was that you were right to be angry, that the silence earned was respected, is more important than any PR campaign." Kenji sighed. "We'll wait a week to make a decision, but we expect more." "Then words you'll have them," I told her after the call. I didn't tell Chase I didn't tell her. He didn't even know Kenji had stopped talking. Instead, I personally rewrote the contract in Japanese, including all of the necessary changes to fix what was wrong. I added it with honorifics, localized language, and etiquette notes built in. To a letter written by hand, yes, a Real letter sealed with the company's the original gold-embossed stationery was a nice touch, and while I that caused the cracks in Elridge and Company to get bigger. Canceled a planned site visit. Our Indian tech partner took back money for a joint study proposal, and one of our senior regional experts quit, saying they couldn't come to an agreement. Leadership. The board began to talk behind Chase's back. By Thursday, he looked like a man. He paced more and stumbled through speeches as he walked across cracking ice. He set up meetings that didn't get anything done and blamed them on slow contact with Kenji's company. The CFO didn't believe him. Marka and I didn't believe him either. And then there was the internal letter marked private, but sent anyway. First to me, then to half the House subject line board meeting about the performance of the interim head that night. I stayed late and drank cold green tea from a broken mug I had kept in my drawer for a year at work. 3. A faint echo of Chase's voice could be heard from the meeting room, fast defensive by itself. At 9:18 p.m., Richard sent me a short text message. Final meeting tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Nobody else was in my office, so I sat back and let the silence settle, calm down around me. This wasn't about getting even anymore. It never was. This was about telling the truth about skills and how much it costs to undervalue the people who keep the machine going. Loudly and smoothly, carefully and with care that can't be matched by an app or outsourced to a stranger in a different country, I shut down my PC and stood up. Slowly, he walked through the empty office, past the glass walls, blinking screens, and the sound of people who were having trouble seeing. When I first walked into this building, I was young and focused on my goals. I was hoping that tomorrow I would walk in again, but this time I wouldn't be the quiet one they forgot to ask for. They'd have to answer to. The next morning, I got to Elridge and Company 15 minutes early, but I wasn't out of nerves not to get ready. I just wanted a moment to be still. The lobby was stillness, like when people are holding their breath. People watched me as I walked across the marble floor. Some were interested, some were wary, and some were glad that no one spoke or had. To the air told me it was time. I took the lift to the top floor and walked out into quiet, raised a polite eyebrow at me and pointed to the glass doors. The meeting room was half full, sat at the head of the table between two board members I knew from shareholder meetings. Marcia was also there, so the CFO was sitting at the far end of the room in a chair that was a little too big for his frame. Chase. He didn't look at me, and I sat down next to Richard without saying a word. The papers in front of me were all ready, neatly organized. Check my proposal. The room was quiet. Began. Thank you all for coming. This meeting is not for discipline, but for planning. We're here to talk about the several of our foreign partnerships have had performance problems in the past few months. No one. We've also asked Natalie to come here today, Richard said, because she's the only one in this room who can tell you what really happened. He looked at me. Natalie, I didn't say anything right away. I opened the folder and slid the first paper across the table. It shows what happened in the Elridge International Division over the last 90 days. The second sheet is a list of everything that happened. During miscommunications, cultural cues were missed, and our Singapore-based seller broke the contract without looking for someone to replace me. Then a third of this is a description of the money I lost or at risk right now because my partner has stopped talking to me. I let the silence between each page. These problems didn't exist before I was fired, I said. One of the board members across the table fixed his glasses and leaned forward. You're saying these losses directly result from Chase's choice to fire you. I'm not saying that I answered to the partners RI Open. This is my last document. It has direct statements from 3 foreign partners, including Kenji, my declaring their promise to come back under one condition. The room waited, and I looked, telling Chase straight on that I stay and that he should step down. Chase finally looked up, stiffness of someone trying to hold back an emotion but not sure which one to use. He opened his mouth, but Richard raised his hand and said softly, "No more spin chase." Seen the numbers and heard the silence. But Chase started and stopped. There was nothing else to say, so Richard turned to the board and said, "Yes, I'm reinstalling myself as Chase will not be able to run the company anymore. And the caretaker leadership board will look at the structure of the Department for Global Relationships." The vote was unanimous, so I said I didn't brag or even look at Chase again. I just got my papers together. As I stood there, Richard said, "Natalie, if you're okay with staying, I'd like you to lead the rebuilding of our—" I stopped for a moment, and then smiled. It wasn't a big smile or a sharp one. "Finish. I'll need a new office," I told Richard with a smile. "Pick one up," he said. As I walked down the hall, I passed Chase. He didn't say anything, but I did. "Because you didn't understand. What I did, you fired me. Then you brought me back with the hope that I'd fix what you broke. I didn't come back for you, Chase." He blinked but didn't look at me. "I came back so you could see the having power is not the same as earning it." I walked on. That afternoon, I sat down in a 12th floor corner office that got plenty of sun. The desk was empty, clean, and new. I turned on my laptop, drank some jasmine tea, and wrote my first email of the day. The day I renewed my subject with Kenji Honor. When I hit send, I thought of everything that had happened. Not the loss, abuse, or firing, but the idea that experience can help, that loyalty doesn't matter, that connections aren't important, that you can't hire someone to speak fluently for you, and you can't make trust happen automatically. If you think silence means weakness, don't be shocked when the quiet ones bring down the whole system with precision, not noise. Some ends don't come with cheers. They just bring things back into balance, which is more than enough.